Welcome to Free Advice Friday. My name is Keri Barnum for New Shelves Books, and we are here to talk about publishing, marketing, the business of being an author. I am so glad to be here with all of you. It's such a great community. We have a couple of questions who've come in by email and have come in by chat today. So we are going to answer those first. If you are watching a replay or if you're watching on Facebook, know that you can join us live and ask your questions live by going to newshelves.com/FAF, Free Advice Friday. And then just register. It's absolutely free. You're not on camera. You don't have to worry about getting dressed or anything crazy. And you can join us live, or you can always email in your questions to info@newshelves.com. So we're going to go ahead and get started here with the emailed questions that we had. Let's see. So we'll start with Mark's question because I had just pulled it up. Let's see, I'm trying to get an idea of the orders of magnitude of sales that are reasonable to expect in this environment, or really anytime. I'd love to hear you brag a little. What are your best successes in the nonfiction arena? For example, how many of a single book were you able to sell? Thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands? How much money did the author make over 1 or 2 years? Thousands of dollars, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands? Oh, my friend. All right, I'm gonna be that person. If you had a big red balloon, I would take my little pin and I would pop it. Um, Here's the thing about book sales, nonfiction specifically. Let's talk about it there. Most nonfiction books do not sell thousands of copies. They sell hundreds of copies. But many nonfiction books, especially things that are not memoir, they are a piece of an author's overall platform. And that platform might be consulting, it might be a business, it might be speaking, it might be just social media and earning on social media. But most authors in the nonfiction space are not they are not earning a full-time income on their book, especially one book. When they are, they typically have multiple books, not just one. And even more than that, they are not just earning money on their books. They are building it as a business. They are then getting endorsements or speaking or, when we think about fiction titles, you have these sub rights like film rights. Well, nonfiction books don't so much get that, but courses, consulting, speaking, those are the things that actually fund an author for most things. When we look at book numbers, and you can find them, a Google search will get you the basic numbers. The average self-published book will sell around 200 copies, and the average traditionally published book will sell 2,000 copies. This is the crazy thing because people always question me and they're like, of course, we've all heard those numbers, but what's average? Well, I will also say a lot of books never get marketed. When we talk about books as a whole, a lot of them never get marketed. So, of course, they don't sell. We talk about this. A book that's not seen is a book that can't be bought. So, if you're marketing your book, your chances of selling books are much higher. However, I will also say that what a lot of people don't realize is the publishing industry as a whole tends to make their profits on less than 10% of books published, which means the other 90% are building the base for the audience. They are, being used in other ways, or they're breaking even, they're doing decently. But the bulk of money that is earned in the publishing industry is from 10% or less of the books that are published. So when we think of thousands, even hundreds of thousands of books being sold, does it happen? Yes. Have I worked on campaigns that have sold thousands of copies even in a week? Yes. Now, I will say there's a difference between ebook and paperback. As far as books I've seen sell or been a part of selling, ebooks have been a vast majority. They're also a big part of book sales, and it depends on, again, like cookbooks. They're going to sell in hard copy, a children's book, hard copy, romance, probably ebook in most forms. So we really have to kind of consider that. And as far as how many books people will sell, it really depends on multiple things. It depends on if the author has a platform that they can lean into and leverage. Have they built an audience, a newsletter, a social media following? Do they have the social credibility and the social audience to sell into? That makes a huge difference in sales. Is this book something that has other, are there other platforms tied to it? Is this book something that is a gift versus like a nonfiction self-help? I think that makes a difference too. There is a indie author who has um, done these books, and the books are kind of like, it's not a journal, but it's kind of like helping you tell like your family story, or like, hey, this is like get the memories from dad and write them down, and kind of like a write your own story kind of thing. And these books have sold so much and they make so much money. But the reason why is that it's a giftable item. It's not just something that I'm reading and using once. This is something that can apply to almost anyone. Almost anyone can be like, hey, it's Father's Day. Don't know what to get dad. Let's, preserve his memories and his stories. So that's got really broad appeal. So I think we have to look at your audience and how big your audience is. You have to look beyond your book sales, because a lot of times for nonfiction, I will also say, that book sales happen because of speaking engagements. You speak and then people buy your books. We often call that back of house sales. And sometimes it literally means you're selling books at the event. Sometimes it means you spoke at an event, people heard you, they now are like, wow, this person knows their stuff, and they go buy your book. So sometimes we see that. But even then, the most successful nonfiction authors have multiple books, because selling one book doesn't earn you that much money. If you're self-publishing, let's say you're selling a book on Amazon, I'd say on average you're going to earn around $3 to $4 per book after print expenses, or what have you. Let's just call it $3 to $4. So you have to sell a lot of books to make that profit. If it's $4 and you want to make, we know me in math, so let me make sure I can do my math here. 10 books, $40. If we've got 100 books, that's 400. If we've got 1,000 books, that's $4,000. So the average person, I would say, when we talk about income or things like that, let's just say you want to earn 50,000 per year. Let's make it 52,000, because there's 52 weeks in a year. Again, me and math, let's make it easy. That means that if you want to make 52,000 in a year, then you have to earn 1,000 every week. That's a lot of books to sell, quite honestly. Also considering you have to then put your marketing and different budgets into it. Most authors who are selling well, especially as they're building, they are putting anywhere from a third to a half of their profits back into advertising and marketing. That's something a lot of people don't talk about. We talk about these six-figure authors, but we don't often talk about how much they spent in outsourcing things to build their social media, and how much they spent in advertising, because it's huge, I promise you, and different things like that. It's not necessarily all profit. So when we're talking about nonfiction and how much you're going to earn, it depends on your market. How big is your market? How many other people are writing to your market? Because you can have, I've seen someone writing in a niche market, but they're writing in a niche market and no one else was really writing in it. So they were like the king of that market and they did amazing sales. I've seen people write in really big markets, but there's a lot of competition and then they struggle for sales. So that's something to consider as well. And then, of course, your book has to hold up. People have to feel it brings value, that, that they want to tell other people about it. It has to get, reviews are one of those things that are kind of an indicator of how well a book is doing. But I will say for nonfiction, especially, you either have to be writing multiple books that can sell, or you have to be thinking beyond the book and how the book is a part of the overall plan for income. And that's just realistically. How do the reasonably expected numbers of books sold compare for memoirs? Memoirs are a funny thing. That's a really good question. So with memoirs, the thing is that a lot of people write memoirs. There are a lot of memoirs out there. And yes, memoirs make money, but just like the overall publishing industry, very few memoirs make a lot of money because your experience may be, I have to word this correctly. Your experience is important. Your story is important, but that doesn't mean that it's something that will capture everyone's attention. I find that when selling memoirs or reading memoirs, many people will read an experience that they identify with. I want to read this memoir because I'm in that place in my life where I have this experience and I identify with it. Or a memoir has to be so crazy, intriguing. Oh my gosh, I can't believe that's real. That people are talking about it, and people who don't identify with that experience are willing to take their time to live through someone else. We are inherently selfish. It's just how we are. We are inherently, like, typically kind of selfish people. We like to read memoirs about stories that we feel reflect us. It takes intention to go and look for a story that is from someone else's perspective or something that we don't natively just identify with. And so I think that's one of the things that we really have to consider is, memoirs very often don't sell in a huge way. And when they do, they tend to be because the author is doing things like book clubs and people want to talk to the person who had these experiences, um, that kind of thing. So again, what are you doing? What kind of, are you writing it and just putting it up on the internet and hoping people read it? It's probably not going to happen. If you're doing memoirs and you are going and you're talking about the books and you are, sharing your experiences, or if you are speaking, I've seen this too, where people will then build speaking onto it. Hey, my memoir is of this, and now I'm speaking to groups about this. And again, you get those back of house sales. So I've seen that happen as well. So absolutely, that's one of the things we just have to consider. And for numbers, I mean, I hate to be harsh, but you guys know I feel like honesty is important. And so that's one of the things that we just have to consider is that you have to think of it kind of as a business plan and what are you doing for that business plan? Um, so that's just one of the things that we have to consider for sure. And let me see, there was more question. There was more question to the question. So that is kind of one of the things, again, I know, Mark, you kind of asked for like success stories. And yes, there are success stories, but my biggest success stories have come from people who took things and they built a business out of it. The book was part of it, but the book was not all of it. And yes, I do have clients who have sold thousands of copies of their books. But for nonfiction, it's not it's not a ton of them. They have built very successful businesses or they've sold thousands of books across several books, but thousands of copies with one book, it's much fewer. And even if we look at bestseller lists, if we look at USA Today, New York Times, and what's selling, many of the books that are nonfiction that are selling like crazy were written by famous people who had a platform, who had something that people were interested in reading about because of who the person was, regardless of the content. And then every once in a while, we have people with content. But if we look up those people, very few of those people have no internet presence. Very few of these people have just started on their journey. Most of them have a large online presence. They have been speaking for years. They have built on things. So all of those things really matter. Fiction's a different beast altogether because when we look at fiction, I would say your following or your online presence still is important, but it matters a little bit less because your fiction title stands on its own, that it just has to be interesting fiction. Nonfiction, your online presence and who you are needs to support the book, the social credibility piece. It also is how it sells, is based on you. Like you are kind of your own marketing tool for nonfiction. For fiction, people don't have to be interested in your life. They have to be interested in the lives of the characters you create. It's a different beast altogether. And as far as authors who have sold fiction, I have many authors who have full-time careers as fiction authors. I won't say many. I have multiple authors who have full-time careers as fiction authors. Some who are still treating it like a side hustle, but they're earning thousands of dollars a month. And so that's something to be considered, but all of them put in quite a bit of their profits back into cover creation, editing, marketing, paying me. So those are all things you really have to consider with that. And they all have more than one book. I very rarely will see an author, whether it be traditionally published or indie published, who is making a full-time salary on one book. It's usually multiple books. And also keep in mind, if you're traditionally publishing, whatever you're earning is going to be a percentage goes to your agent and a percentage goes to the publisher and a percentage goes to you. So a traditionally published author, after their advance, is typically earning maybe $1 a book by the time it all washes out. Now, that's not always true, but just kind of using those kind of ideas. So even if they are selling 1,000 books a month, that's only $1,000 a month. Now, if you have 5 books selling 1,000 copies a month, then we start to see better numbers. But you would be surprised of books and authors that we think of as successful, who are not selling thousands of books a month. It's just not happening. So I think that we sometimes have this idea that if someone's successful or if they have some nice sales, that they are just killing it and selling hundreds of thousands of books. And that is very rarely the case, even for really, really popular titles. I think last year I was talking to an author about this, about how many people had sold 1 million books in a year. I did actually just have this conversation. And so when we look at how many people have sold 1 million copies of a book in a single year, I'd love to know in the chat if you kind of put in the chat, like how many you think had been sold, like how many, how many people you thought had sold 1 million copies, because it probably is going to surprise you how that is. It's going to surprise you how few it is when we actually look at the numbers. All right. Stella says 500. Nope. Victoria says 1, closer, but nope. Jackie says 1 to 5. Elle says 0. Kim says 2 to 6. Let me actually let me pull this up because again, it's going to surprise you. I actually had like real numbers so I could tell you correctly. All right. So in 2023, 8 titles sold 1 million or more copies. A lot of them, it was like 1.2. But out of all of the books, only 8 titles sold 1 million copies in 2023. Let's not say people didn't give away books or they didn't have unlimited page reads to equal 1 million. I'm talking about actual books sold. And Jane's question about the breakdown is such a smart question. So let me tell you that. So of those books sold, I think it's really important to look at the breakdown. The breakdown is that of those 8 that were sold, 5 were romance novels by 2 authors. One of them, 3 of the books were Colleen Hoover. No surprise there, right? So 3 of the 8 were Colleen Hoover, and the other 2 were romantasy dragon books. And I've just blanked on Rebecca Yarros is the other one. Her 2 books sold 1 million copies each. They went absolutely viral. So of the 8, 5 were mysteries. The others, let me find it because I got distracted. The others of the ones that were left over, let's see. I did have it up here and then I got distracted and excited and I started moving things around. Oh, 2 were memoirs from famous figures. Think Britney Spears and, Prince Harry. So two were memoirs, and one was a children's book from Dave Pilkey, who is very well known, who has many, many books out. So 8 titles sold 1 million or more copies in 2023. 5 were romance from two different authors, 2 were memoirs from very well-known figures, and one was a children's book from a author who's been around for a long time. Dave Pilkey has at least 30 books out, and he's got long-standing series. So when we think about, can I sell 1 million books in a year? I think you can do anything. Probability wise, your chances of selling 1 million are pretty low. And I don't think that should discourage us. I think that that should be a reality check and a numbers check for, hey, are you selling 100 books a month? You're doing actually pretty good. You're doing better than most authors. And not that we don't need other authors to not do well to be successful, right? We don't need to put other people down to be successful. But I hope that it gives you some kind of grounding on the fact that no, you're probably not going to sell 1 million copies. Forget 1 million copies in a year, 1 million copies in a lifetime of a book, which is considered about 10 years is like the average lifetime of a book, is not that likely. If you are selling 100, couple hundred a month, then you're actually doing pretty good. And depending on how you're set up, you might actually be earning more money than most authors. You might have a full-time income. So I think that by adjusting our bar of what we think success is, it allows us, number one, to be more content with ourselves and like a hey, but also give yourself the credit that you are due. If you are earning consistent income on your books, give yourself that credit. That's amazing. You wrote a book. That is amazing. You wrote more than one book. I'm already impressed by you. So I think that's just one of the things that we really have to consider. Yes, I think that's funny. I think absolutely, yes, romance, when we talk about book sales, I also have to point this out. Reports have just come out, and I know Jane Friedman just talked about it, I think, in her latest Hot Sheets newsletter, and she was talking about how book sales are actually doing really well this year. Numbers are looking good, and which is fantastic. But what a lot of people don't consider is what's earning a lot of that money. It's adult romance and adult fantasy. That's what's earning a lot of money. It's not to say other things aren't earning money, but that's earning a lot of money. And so there are people who will write to market or they will go, they see it not as, again, I have to be so careful with my words. Some people write because it's what they love to write, or they write the craft, or whatever it may be. Some people say, I'm a good writer and I'm going to treat it like a business. I'm going to go find the genre. I'm going to go find the market that's selling well. I'm going to read up, learn everything I can, learn the tropes, learn what readers expect of this genre. And I'm going to write these books. And I'm going to write one a year. I'm going to write 4 a year. Don't know. But these people it's business to them. Those are the authors who are earning a full-time income because they're treating it like a business and they're putting full-time energy into it. Now, that's not to say that some authors who are doing it more for the joy of it or because they like a certain genre, it's not to say there's no authors who are earning a full-time income on it. It's harder to get lucky than to plan for business success and hit markers in business. And that I'm not saying every writer should go and treat it like a business plan, but I am saying that we have to consider that when we consider like, where's the money coming in, how much money is made here, what percentage of each thing are authors like earning money on, even if we break it down to fiction and nonfiction. Great. How much of the nonfiction income in a year is coming from well-established, well-known authors, whether they be celebrity memoirs or people who have really established platforms writing nonfiction titles? It's going to be really different. And so I just think that that is something that must be considered. Jane, you're asking for the source of that. I want to say I pulled that from a Publishers Weekly article. But I would have to look it up. Again, this was something that I had just had conversation in not too long ago. And so I think it was Publishers Weekly, but I will look that up and try to get it to you. Because sources are important, absolutely, but I do think it was Publishers Weekly. Let's see. Do. Oh, of course. Now I try to look for it and I'm just pulling up all sorts of craziness. Um, I will look for it and I will try to send it out to you. Um, and get that to you. I'm pretty sure it was Publishers Weekly. Oh, look, now I'm stuck in a loop of, would you like to sign in? Not at the moment. I will look that up for you though. All right. Yeah. And yeah, exactly. Kim's saying, I still love writing and, should try to treat it like a business, but not everyone should. For some people, it's a release, it's a joy, it's what you love to do. And sometimes that makes more money than otherwise. I often ask, who'd you write this book for? Did you write it for yourself to make money? Did you write it for yourself because you had a cool story? You just need to get it out. And I do have authors who are like, I just wanted to publish a book. I just wanted a book with my name on it. And I've had this story in my mind for years. I've had authors who come and say, this is a business. I want to know what to get into, what to write to earn the most money. Why are you writing? For some people, it's an income. For some people, it's the joy of it. For some, it's a hobby or an art. For some people, they had an experience that they can help other people with, and they're passionate about helping other people. For some, it's their own story, and they need to tell their story because it's a type of release and therapy. And if other people can read and relate, all the better. But why are you writing? And I think that drives so many other things. And the answer is going to be different for everyone. And there's no right or wrong answer. It's just knowing why you're writing will often inform what you write. It will inform how you market, what you put into a book, and it will also inform how much time and energy you put into it. If it's a business and a full-time job, guess what? Most full-time jobs are 40 hours a week, and you got to put your butt in a chair and you got to do the work. If you're doing it as a passion project, then think of it more of, okay, if I was volunteering for an organization, how much time might I put into it? That's more likely what you're putting into your writing. And it's not a wrong answer. It's what's your answer. And are you okay with the results from that? And adjusting your expectations and your desires from there. Exactly. Sometimes you write your book just because, hey, it's a crazy story. I've had times where I've talked to people about my life and they're like, wow. Now I have not felt the need or the drive to write parts of my story. That doesn't mean I don't share them with people or I don't volunteer with organizations because that was not my drive. But if it is for you, that alone, it's a beautiful thing. And it's a good reason to write a book. It's a good reason to publish a book. It's just gonna change how you might market it or what you do with it or what your expectations of it are. Let's see. Nancy's asking, what do I know about Calumet Editions? It's a publisher that shares 50-50. I do not have experience with this publisher, so I can't really tell you much if they are giving 50-50 in royalties. It sounds like royalties are good. But again, all of the normal things applies. Do your research, Google them, Google their reviews, Google their name with the word scam and see if anything comes up. Check out places like Writer Beware, ask people in the industry as you just did. I'm just not helpful today, but ask other people in industry and industry groups if you know what you know about them. Go on their website and look up their books. And then don't just look at their books on their website, go find them on Amazon. Are they getting reviews? How are they ranking? Are they selling? Look up the authors. Do the authors, appear to be doing well or happy with the result? Those are the things that I would be doing when any new company approached me or if I was considering companies to work with. Same thing, Pam, with your question about Dark Frog. Um, check them out. And also know I will say this from the rooftops again and again. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. If they're promising you the moon on a very low budget, they're probably not going to deliver. They're probably not going to deliver the moon. They will probably, a lot of companies will have really low offers. They will, it's only this amount, but then they add on a bunch of extras as you go down the road. I cannot tell you how many authors I've talked about or talked to who say, yeah, I went with this company because they said it'd be $900. And then by the time they're out the door, they spent $9,000, which there are people and companies that are thousands of dollars, but being upfront, knowing what you're getting, knowing the quality, the satisfaction of people who've worked with them, those are all the things to kind of consider. Let's see. My second book in a series is coming out in February. How should I promote it, given that it would be best if readers read the first book before the new one? Excellent question. When working with a series, we always celebrate book two. The thing to remember is typically when you launch your first book, you're launching to everyone, every potential reader. And you should pretty much always be marketing book one to every potential reader. Book two in your series is something that's typically launched to your warm market, to people who've already read book one, to people on your social media, on people on your newsletter. Those are the people who are most likely going to be interested in book two because they, have read book one. So when I work with a series, it baffles some people, but I'm telling you, this is not unusual. When I work with a series, almost all of my ads and marketing stick with book one, even if there's a new book two. That's not to say we don't promote it. We don't do, Goodreads giveaways for book two, and we don't do different things. But the idea is that you have to sell book one to get people on the journey. The thing from there is from book one, you have to get people onto your mailing list. You have to get people onto your contact list so you can market book two and then book three and book four and book five to them. So I would celebrate it. I would, of course, do graphics on social media, let your newsletter list know, maybe even get a couple of reviewers or ARC readers. You can always submit for trade reviews, of course, even if it's not the first book in series. But as far as your marketing, you're going to celebrate book two as the new book, and you're going to keep on marketing book one as your main event with most of your ads and your marketing, because not many people are going to start mid-series, especially for a book that is kind of continuous or that kind of thing. So it's more of a smaller celebration with your warm market than the big launch that your book one typically was. Not in all cases, but in many cases, and depending on your book and how integral it is that they read the first book in the series before getting to book two. So that's definitely something to consider. Let's see, since the majority of publishing houses do very little to promote the book once it is out, why, in your view, are new authors without a strong newsletter list and database still wasting time trying to find a traditional publisher when they can self-publish and use experts like New Shelves and then keep total control over the book, including revenues? Am I missing something? Well, yeah, there's different reasons for why people want to publish. Sometimes for some people, they don't feel like they have succeeded as an author unless they've gotten an agent in a traditional publishing deal. And again, this is not right or wrong. This is just how people feel, and it's okay to feel. Some people feel like, hey, I just want to get my book out and be in control, and that's okay too. But people going traditional press typically go for a couple of reasons. Number one, that's what success looks like and feels like to them. And so that's what they're going after. Number two, they don't want to learn how to be a publisher. They don't want to be a business owner, and they want a partner who's going to take care of that for them. And so some of them will do it for that reason. Number three, money. Yes, when you self-publish, you have full rights, full control, and you make full revenue, but also you are responsible for all upfront costs, for the cost of editing and getting your cover and publishing, paying for marketing help. So for a lot of authors, they don't have that money, or they're not willing to invest it in their book in that way. And so for a lot of authors, they decide they want a traditional publisher to partner with them so that they don't have to front load cost. For some authors, it's because they are thinking broad spectrum and the idea of, yes, when you get a traditional publisher, especially a big traditional publisher, they do have marketing and PR teams. They do some things for you. Now, they don't do everything for you. And I will say they do less overall, unless you're a frontlist client. If you have a title coming out soon and your books have been doing really well and you're building an audience, they're more likely to spend more time with you. But they all typically have like a standard of marketing or promotions that they will do, depending on just your book and who you're working with and your agent and all sorts of things. So they do some marketing, but beyond that, they have the relationships that many authors will leverage. So having your book in a traditional publisher, especially a large traditional publisher, is going to give you better distribution. It means your books are more likely to be in wholesalers like Brodart and Ingram and Baker and Taylor, and at competitive terms, both for returnability and for discounts that make it easier for libraries and bookstores and retailers to say yes. So you're more likely to get stocked in brick and mortar stores and in libraries just because they're there. Also, those bigger publishers will leverage those relationships to get more of their books in. Hey, this is an untested author who doesn't have that much of a market, but you know us, we've got so many of the big authors that are selling a lot of books. Let's give it a try. And sometimes they get books in that way. So there are advantages to having a bigger traditional publishing house. It also means your book is more likely to get exposure that could lead to film rights or to other sub rights deals. And you don't have to necessarily learn all the business of it. That's not to say some authors don't take a very active approach in the business of being an author as a traditionally published author, but you don't have to. And for some people, they don't want to be a full-time business owner, and that's what self-publishing is. Self-publishing is taking the reins. And even if you hire people like New Shelves to come alongside you to help walk you through the process, so you don't have to, learn everything, or so you've got a guide and a mentor, it's still ultimately it's on you. You're front loading the costs, you are making the decisions. It is yours to succeed, or I hate to use the word fail, but maybe not do as well as you had hoped. And that is a lot of responsibility. And some people just don't want it. Some people don't want that responsibility. Some people are overwhelmed by it. And I think that's fair. So everyone's got their reasons of why they do it or not. And so yeah, everyone's got their reasons. They're not good, bad, they're not right or wrong. It's just kind of what it is, in my opinion. Everyone chooses, you've got to choose what's right and best for you. I have a lot of authors too who have tried the traditional route, and then go, hey, I'm tired of waiting. I want my book out. And so rather than pitching agents and trying to get a publisher, they're self-publishing because they don't want to wait. I have this one author, um, and he cracks me up because every book he says, well, I'm just going to go ahead and publish it because I don't know if I'll be around. I don't know if I'll be around if I wait. This person is going to outlive us all, but it's just very much, hey, I'm older. I want to see my book out in print. I don't want to wait 10 years for the hope of a goal. I want to get it out now. And again, it's all good, right? Let's see. I agree. How important is targeting genre-related book clubs for sales? Um, I mean, book clubs can be a huge part of book sales because it usually is not just one sale, it's multiple book sales. So that can be really helpful. As far as do book clubs work for everybody? Not everybody. Some books just aren't really great book club reads, honestly. Some books are like made for discussions, some not as much, just depends. Now, that doesn't mean you can't have a book club around it, but getting people to read your book for a book club, you've got to have some talking points, some reasons on why people would want to discuss it. And it's one avenue for marketing, but it's not the only one. So it's important if that's one of your goals for the book, if that's one of the ways you hope to sell it, and that's your strategy. But it's not for everybody. I have successful authors who aren't, and are their books read in book clubs? Maybe, but not really to my knowledge. So it's not a key stone that they've built their career on. And I have some authors who do tons of book clubs all the time, and they have massive, very loyal followings because of that. So again, it just depends on your strategy. Let's see. Whoops. Our chat is moving. How dare it? Let's see. Before I published my first book, Elle says, I looked at what each type of publishing involved, listening to industry leaders like New Shelves. And there's no right or wrong answer. And that's exactly right. There's no right or wrong answer. It's just a matter of what fits for the writer. I couldn't agree more. And I've said that for a long time. I very much stand as that. As a self-publisher, what are the pros and cons of selling your book under the umbrella of your own publishing company? Rights means you have the rights and control. It's not self-publishing. It's not self-publishing if you're publishing under someone else's name. That is hybrid or vanity publishing, depending on the company. But that is not self-publishing. That is the process of self-publishing is very much the same, but the difference is who owns the rights. If you are still, one of the advantages of self-publishing is you own your rights, you make all your revenue. But if you're publishing under someone else's umbrella, they own the rights to publish and print your book, not you. You are typically getting a royalty, and many times that royalty is not much better than traditional publishing. It might be 10 or 15%. Occasionally you'll find a company that's like 50-50. But there are a lot of self-publishing companies. Like, again, it's the same process. You're indie publishing, but you're going through their name, not your own. They don't give you full control. And sometimes you're not happy with the product and you're stuck because you already paid them to publish under their name. They own the rights to it. They can set discounts as they want or don't want. They have a lot of control. And so that's really the downside of that. I am a very firm believer that if you're partnering with a hybrid publisher for reasons like you need the partner, you're not, you're okay with a profit split, because it's less expensive for you to publish, or there are specific reasons, and you vetted a hybrid and you are going in with your eyes wide open, fair enough. But for most people who are going through the process of self-publishing, I almost always encourage authors do it under their own business, their own account, own your rights, own your royalties, so that you're in control of your publishing destiny. For some people, they don't want the business of it. They're like, yeah, no, I don't want to have to actually do that. I just want someone to pay me royalties once a year. Fair enough. If that's your reasons and you've got your eyes wide open into what you're going into, go for it. If that's not what you want, though, I think knowledge is power and we should just know what we're getting into. Oh, thank you for that insight, Cheryl. I agree. I've heard that from multiple people. Oh, back to book clubs. Are most book clubs, and most book clubs, are they in person or virtual? We went through a big period of virtual book clubs because everything was virtual. I will say that there are still a lot of virtual book clubs, but more and more we're seeing people go back to in-person book clubs because we want to sit and chat with people. We're kind of all over Zoom. So not to say that there aren't book clubs, but I will tell you that when I work with authors and they do get requests for book clubs, almost always it's a request to come in person. It's more exciting. They get to meet the author. It's more fun. That's not to say that people don't do Zoom book clubs and they're not excited to have the author there, and it's still absolutely an option. But I would say that people tend to be more excited and show up and be interactive in an in-person book club over a online book club, in my experience. Oh, Pam, if you're asking about creating a publishing company, so sometimes you're actually creating a company. You're doing it under a business, an LLC for publishing, or a DBA LLC. That just gives you kind of protection of separating your personal self from your business. I'm not a lawyer. I cannot give legal advice, but to my understanding, That is kind of what it is it gives you that protection, but also it's the difference of creating that professionalism of a imprint. So some authors will not create an LLC or DBA, which is fine. Again, not a lawyer, can't give you legal advice, not a CPA, cannot give you, financial advice. But some people, the idea of creating an imprint for your publisher is because it gives, again, that professionalism and that credibility. So if I go to a bookstore and I say, hey, would you like to carry my book? And they'll say, yeah, who's the publisher? Oh, Keri Barnum Books. And my name is Keri Barnum on the book. They are immediately going to think this person is self-published and they're not very professional. Those two things together are the key. It's not just, wow, it was self-published. They're self-published and they're not very professional. They're looking for people who are professionally published, whether they're indie, hybrid, self-published, traditionally published. We are looking for professional product, for professional company, for that feeling. And so that is why oftentimes we will do a publishing imprint or separate with an LLC or DBA, is for that level of professionalism that we want when setting up a book or a company. All right, let's see. Answered this one. And how do you find and reach out to book clubs? Excellent question. Most of the time, good old Google will be our friend. So Google book clubs can be amazing. Also know most libraries and most bookstores have book clubs associated with them. Like my library has like 3 book clubs. The local bookstore has a book club. So that's a great place to start. And then also, if you've built a readership online, put it out to your readers. If you have a newsletter list, put it out to them. Hey guys, I'd really love to visit a couple of book clubs this year. Does anyone have a book club that they would recommend I reach out to, or any contacts? Is a great way. Simply just ask. You can, of course, also like actually just Google and start reaching out to book clubs. I promise you'll find stuff. Go into reader groups like Facebook groups or different things like that. A lot of book talkers and bookstagrammers online have started to form their own virtual book clubs. So you can always, reach out and try to be a part of those. But it's just really a good old search, reach out to your contacts, and then look for your local bookstores and libraries. Is usually the best way to go about it. I also have a client who just recently has started reaching out to Rotary clubs for her. It's a book based on a true story. So it's not a memoir, it's fictionalized, it's creative fiction, or creative nonfiction, I'm sorry. And she has had a ton of success with Rotary clubs. I did not realize a lot of Rotary clubs, I guess they meet like once a week and they like to have speakers or guests twice a month. So every other meeting, they have a guest or something like that. And so she is having so much success with like Rotary clubs. Like she's got Rotary club bookings through like May of 2025. So that might be a good option for anyone who might want to look into book clubs and you think that, people in Rotary clubs might be interested in your book. I hadn't thought of that before, and so I thought that was pretty neat. All right, we are at the end. I'll take this last question from Kevin. What's the difference between self-published and indie? We often will use them interchangeably in the sense that self-published is we're self-publishing and indie is independent publishing. We will often kind of use them interchangeably, but if we were going to give correct terms to them, indie or independent publishing is independent. It's independent of big traditional companies. So oftentimes, small presses or micro presses will be independent presses. They're independent of large companies and of the big 5. So that would be an indie. Then self-publishing isn't necessarily indie. Some indie publishers are small independent publishers that are traditionally publishing books. Right. Let's confuse you as much as possible, essentially. And then self-publishing is you are self-publishing, but a lot of self-publishers have taken that leap of creating a business, of creating an LLC or DBA and making an independent press. So they are self-publishing through their independent press. again, how much can we confuse you? We're sure gonna try. And so that's kind of the difference between the two of those. All right, you guys. Thank you, everybody. Hopefully, clear as mud, right? Well, thank you all for being here. I hope that you have a good week.